The problem was in construction, we had a lot of students that were failing on certain units in the City and Guilds qualification, and one of the main units was a crossover unit. We have a lot of students from different countries that have different languages, and the terminology that this country represents on the units, a lot of the students weren't grasping. And they were taking 2 to 3 times to pass this principles of building test. So I thought if we could use the problem that we've got in construction, it crosses over to every trade that we use: painting and decorating, plumbing, carpentry and joinery, electrical. And if we can adapt something, and we looked at some of the stuff that John already had, and it was almost there already, and we just had to tweak it a little bit, and that's when the app started getting better and better.
We made the assumption that it was that learners needed sort of something to support their language skills, and when we first kicked off, we had something that was sort of a language-based puzzle problem. What we realised when John demonstrated the real-world environment is that we could use that environment to build on the skills that learners already had in acquiring their practical skills in the workshop and in the workplace, to actually learn some of the key theoretical aspects and knowledge-based aspects that underpin the particular unit of the City and Guilds that goes across all construction programmes at that level.
It's designed to be a framework to hold a complete syllabus of content. So we've populated it to a degree to show the whole framework and how it would work, but now it needs obviously all the shelves filling up with the actual content. The platform allows students to follow the process of a house build, right from the very fundamentals to the snagging and topping off at the end of the house build, but it always shows things in context. So the plumber will have an awareness of where the engineering roles fit into something. So as well as telling a story through a house build, it allows a student to have quick, easy and engaging access to the micro learning outcomes that are expected from a project of this sort.
Benefits to learners, obviously the visual graphics that John put together were absolutely out of this world. When you're sitting in a classroom environment and you're talking about foundations, and you've got different types of raft foundation, pad foundation, a lot of learners can't visualize. It could be, you could put mathematics into it. It's the concrete, the ratio of concrete, and when you start putting stuff like that in it gets a lot quite confusing for the learner. But the way John broke it down, he put all these pictures in, and he set time constraints, and he put all the terminology on the sides, and the learners just found it fantastic as a game. On one section we split the learners into 2 groups, and it was like a race against time and against the other group who could get the best time. If you got the terminology wrong with the wrong picture to go in, then those learners would get a penalty. So your time scale will go up. And I think what we're trying to do is in the real world, what would happen if you made a mistake on a job. The work programme would be set back, and there could be some financial penalties for the construction project. So that was the type of ethos that we were trying to build in.
The actual gamification is a very low level competition. It's things like competition in group competition, or self-challenging. So one of the things we've had feedback is that anything like this can't work over a period of an hour, or it's not a long-term game. The students are looking for things that last 4 or 5 minutes, but will reinforce one particular point of a subject, something that they can use as a discussion in team challenges, or something they can use as a revision device. So it's not a hard thing to analyze really basic levels of gamification, but wrap them up into things that people actually want to learn. So if it's a jigsaw puzzle, it makes a big difference if that jigsaw puzzle is a picture of a hobby that's your passion. The feedback we got from the students as well is that if it was going to be gamified, they didn't mind that at all, but it had to be real. And the truth is that the actual build of a house it's a replica of quite a lot of games, your sim games, all of those Farmville, all of these are replica of real life world environments, and it's the challenge of getting it right. And that's really what we concentrated on.
Can I just add on to that, John? I thought as well there was a big difference between the way the 16 to 18 learners approach the game compared to the adult learners. I think the adult learners took a step back and tried to think, where 16 to 18 learners would just press buttons and then realise that they got it wrong and then have to go back again. And I think we learned something about our own learners at the time and now actually how they learn. So it was quite informative the way it all come together. We were just understanding our groups a little bit better as well.
I think this is better learning because it actually puts the learners right at the centre of the process, and they are controlling the learning themselves. Although obviously the content is created and the games are created by their teachers with the developer, the learner is in charge of their own learning process. And that was the thing that struck me even in the development of this project, is that we actually very much put the learners at the heart of it. And one of the things that they talked about was how previously they'd been taught in a lecture and talked at, so very directed from the teacher directed learning. This, they felt they were learning by doing, by actually making the house, by making mistakes and learning from errors. So they learned as much from getting things wrong as getting things right. And I think the comments about different learners realizing that if they got it wrong, they were getting penalties, and then thinking they wanted to get it right. They wanted to explore what right was, but they didn't mind actually making the odd mistake and learning from that. So I think that's where it really turned learning on its head. So instead of the teacher standing up and being the font of all knowledge, it was actually they were learning together. And the students were learning with the teachers in the making of the product as well. So the process for me was as important as the product.
I think when we done the practice lessons and we put it on the board and we set the two groups up, as Jill just said, the learners, the answers they were drawing the answers out themselves instead of me coming up to them, and all I was doing was bobbing in a little bit when you were going a little bit off topic, and I'd just bring them back in. As a tutor, it was amazing for me to see that the learners were directing their own learning, and there was a lot of teamwork involved in it as well. So possibly I'd sit down and say, as an aid, a visual aid, it's probably one of the best ones that I've seen. This will help me do my job as a tutor because it brings out the underpinning knowledge of the task before we go into the main topic sort of thing. Construction, it's so wide, it's so varied that a lot of learners get lost. It's the terminology, it's the underpinning knowledge, it's the principles that you can bring in, which helps mould how the learners will progress. It just doesn't benefit tutors as individuals, it benefits tutors as a team. Each of our tutors have got specialities. So it brought us all together, and the working environment got better. Everyone was dying to put their input into the gamification app, and we just seen it as a boon to what we do in the classroom.
We needed to sort of prove a proof of concept that this could be integrated with Moodle. Now that they've got the Go One application for Microsoft Teams, it means that any of these lessons could be delivered through Microsoft Teams. We also created a mobile version for the Android platform, so it means that it could be used as an application within a teaching environment within the lesson, but any pupil could either access it through Microsoft Teams or download it to their mobile platform if they wanted to use it offline and practice basically revision. This is accessible because it uses gaming approaches that are inherent to most people's social lives as it is.
It's easy to use.
It can be accessed anywhere, anytime, both online and offline. We know through our experience of working with learners, adult learners in practical subjects at the LTE group, that they are really successful in learning practical skills in the workshop, in the workplace, and have a range of skills that they've already got to learn. And what we wanted to explore, because they weren't as successful in theory, is how through this project we could use the real world environment and gamification to engage and involve learners in that knowledge-based learning and to support that, particularly around that development of underpinning knowledge, vocabulary, and those skills that they need to access that professional content.
But I think this game gives the same amount of experience, even though it's in a virtual environment.
We know that our learners learn by not being talked at, but actually by doing, by making things, and making things that are real and tangible. And this application allows them to develop their cognitive skills, thinking skills, language skills through practical activities in a virtual workplace. It was important that we involved employers in the design process of this project. They have been involved in our programs, involved in the practical delivery of programs and offer work placements for our students. So we wanted them to be actively engaged in making sure that the content was relevant, real, and up to industry standard. So we involved them and got direct feedback. In fact, they tested the game themselves. And gave us some really positive feedback on what needed to be done. We also involved time-served professionals in very specific elements, such as the roofing, so that we actually got it accurate as per the terminology and structures that are used on site in real work context.
Our learners are taught as accurately as possible to the real world environment, and that's because we've involved tradespeople in the development. Yes, it is true. Yeah.
I've always learned from physically doing things, not just as much reading and writing about it, so it's a really good way of doing that without having to waste money on materials and getting everything wrong and learning the hard way.
Find it more hands-on than a book or anything else that basically we have at the moment. For me, it's the easiest and the best type of learning.
Being able to practice the actual construction of something instead of just learning about it and understanding the consequences of getting things wrong is a really good way of learning.
It's more mobile, it's a lot easier to reference to. If it's basically, you can take it around to places. If you've got a spare 5 minutes, you're never going to just pull out a book, you're going to be on your phone anyway. He's done that.